Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to the Black Remembering Podcast, where we highlight the heavy and the hope. Before we jump into today's episode, I'd like to highlight a new storytelling invitation that we are offering our audience and community. Our new vocal video prompts invite our audiences to share brief 2-minute video clips responding to our monthly prompt questions. One evergreen question example is, what does it mean to be rooted in Appalachia? You would think of the foods, the sayings, and any core memories that make up your Appalachian roots. Contributing your voice to our storytelling vocal video page adds your experiences and your perspective and your story to our website story map. And if you're feeling snazzy, if you're feeling a little fancy, you can be one of our podcast guests. Please check out the vocal video URL link in our show notes if you'd like to participate. All right, y'all. We are already 4 months into 2025, which is wild. I'm still in denial about it. We've received so much positive feedback from our Tea on Taxes series. So first of all, thank y'all for listening, engaging, tuning in, and spreading the good news. Today, we are welcoming back the powerhouse and founder of GIP Financials, Sonja Jones. If you didn't already know about Sonja, I recommend going back and listening to her tax journey and info session episodes. In case anyone needs a reminder, here's a little bit about Ms. Sonja Jones. Sonja is a multifaceted seasoned expert in the realm of business accounting and funding, seamlessly weaving together her rich tapestry of experiences across various ventures. With strategic focus on empowering entrepreneurs to amplify profits and secure funding, Sonja has become a prominent figure in the business landscape. She has skin in the game, dating her entrepreneurial experience back to 2009. In 2019, Sonja embarked on a new chapter with the establishment of GIP Financials, a dynamic firm specializing in bookkeeping and business finance consulting. Witnessing the financial challenges faced by many talented entrepreneurs, she aimed to fill the gap by providing crucial financial acumen through her firm. GIP Financials has since expanded its reach, serving clients across multiple states and collaborating with local nonprofits and coaches to impart fundamental business finance education to aspiring entrepreneurs. Sonja is a lifelong learner. Her education credentials include a bachelor's degree in music education from the University of Memphis, master's degree in instructional design and technology from the University of Memphis, a certificate of education finance from Georgetown University, a certified county finance officer from the University of Tennessee County Technical Assistant Service, and a certified QuickBooks Pro advisor. Thank you so much, Sonja, for coming on to our show again.
I want you to do my intros all the time. Thank you so much for inviting me again.
Of course. And just let me know, we can link up. I can do the intro if you're recording. I got you.
Yes. I'm so serious.
Me too, seriously. All right, so let's do our little soul scan thing. It is spring, and that means that the flowers are blooming, the pollen is attacking, but also signifies renewal. So what is one thing that you are looking forward to?
This was a great question. Because when I looked at this on the show notes, it made me think about, legacy. You're talking about spring, new beginnings, and things like that. So I'm a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated.
Okay.
And I pledged fall '98. And in our line, it was eight of us. And we right now are we're old heads. We'll just go ahead and we old. Well, I get it. But we're in the process now of like seeing legacy, right? So we already have one of our line sisters, her daughter is a soror, but now this coming up Sunday, we're our tail, our number 8, her son is going to be a Sigma. And so we're going to get a chance to see him in his probate Sunday. So just seeing that and being able to, because I taught him piano lessons when he was teeny tiny. And he was all things, the artiste. He couldn't, do a piano lesson without having to draw. I had to make a deal with him. You play the song and you can draw for the next 5-10 minutes for your mom come pick you up. Stuff like that. Just be able to see, the kids grow up, and do great things. He's, a cheerleader, just a talented gymnast, and to be able to see him, just doing life, it just kind of, just puts things in perspective, you know. And so that's what I'm looking forward to this weekend, just to see my line sister just crying her eyes out. And we just give her a tissue, all this stuff. So it's exciting.
I love it. I love that's such a blessing to think about legacy and future and what we're passing down. So thank you for sharing.
Hmm.
I believe in one of our last few episodes, I was the thing that had just made me smile was watching Kendrick Lamar at um
Yes.
the Super Bowl. And watching my mom and my sister watch it too, get to
Mhm.
experience like their joy and all of us being hyped. So the thing that I'm looking forward to full circle is that I get to see Kendrick Lamar in concert on May 3rd in Charlotte. I'm ready. I'm so ready.
Ooh, I'm excited.
the My poetry family blessed me with a Christmas present. So this has been like the thing I've been looking forward to since like December, but now it's rolling around. So I'm ready. I learned the line dance. Like
Yes. Take lots of pictures.
I will. I will. All right. So we have a few guiding questions that we're going to jump into.
Hmm.
Um, if you did not get a chance to listen to our Tea on Taxes series earlier this year, please go ahead, hit pause, go back, grab a notebook, listen, take notes, do all the things. But these are a few questions that are kind of like follow-ups and to wrap up the season. They are categorized into 3 to 4 categories, ranging from small business to alternative economies. And Ms. Sonja Jones is going to embark her wisdom upon us. So, as far as small businesses go,
Hmm.
are there any tax breaks that a new small business could write off in their first few years of operation?
Oh, absolutely. So, just as a reminder, if you're starting a business, any expense that you write off has to be ordinary and necessary for the business. So, when folks ask me about what's the difference between ordinary and necessary, I like to say ordinary is like those general expenses that any business can take, kind of like advertising, professional development, things like that, supplies. When things are like necessary, those are, to me, I hear that as industry specific, right? So if like earlier this week I did a class for barbers, right? So I was telling them, like, necessary. GIP Financials has no business buying capes and cape clips and neck straps and all that stuff like that, and clippers, right? That's not necessary for our type of business, but it's necessary for barbers, right? So anything, especially when it comes to the first few years of operation, you're gonna spend a lot of your time getting educated. So your professional development, most of our businesses in the first few years of operation are going to be, home based, right? So make sure that you carve out a certain space in your home, right? To do your business operation so you can take that home office deduction. Those I feel like are going to be like the two biggest things. And then also mileage, as well. Anytime that you're, driving to an event, to vend things like that. So those are kind of like the most common um expenses for the first few years of operation. But I'll also say this, Nita, if you're a startup business and you're not quite sure what expenses you can take or not, go to the IRS website and irs.gov, and you can download the Schedule C tax form. And even if you may not qualify for the Schedule C, most business in their first year operation will. But if not, I like the Schedule C because in the middle of that form, it gives you like the um, commonly used tax deductions for businesses. So if you need a general list, just download that Schedule C form, and that'll help give you some guidance.
Thank you. Thank you. What do you wish someone had told you before starting your own business?
Ooh, child, start small.
Start small.
Start small. And I'll say this, especially not so much with GIP, but when I had my first business in real estate, I could have easily had just started Bell Investments with just the rental property that I had from my first marital residence when we got divorced. I still had that property. I would have been just as successful because it cash flowed. But I felt like in my mind, I needed to do it big. And so we had purchased a block of properties, like in the neighborhood where I was teaching at in the Fraser community, 8 properties, right? It was seller finance, so the deal was sweet. We cash flowed the first couple of years, but once the zoning, had changed because they were all duplexes. And if you're not living on one side of that duplex, it's known as commercial instead of residential. All our cash flow sucked up. Right? So, that would be my first. If somebody would have said, just pump the brakes, hold on. Why are you trying to invest in all these properties? Right? Just start with the one that you have. And then, with that cash flow, build up your reserve, and then you can go and pursue other endeavors. So that's the first thing I'll tell anybody. Start small. Don't despise small beginnings.
Mm, that's really good advice. Thank you.
Hmm.
So we're going to shift a little bit into tax questions.
Okay.
What does it mean to defer your taxes? Or I believe the correct term is like file an extension. What
Hmm.
does it mean? And if someone chooses to do that, what should they expect?
Very good question. Very good question. So when you are filing an extension, you're basically letting the IRS know, like, hey, life is life, and I can't file my taxes on or before the April 15th deadline, right? You just basically giving the IRS a heads up. Now, hear me clearly. Just because you're filing that extension doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be exempt from any type of penalties and fees, right? So if you file that extension, you're just letting the IRS know, hey, don't expect my taxes on or before the 15th. But just know if you end up owing taxes, right? Because once you file that extension, you have until October the 15th. Okay, so you got 6 months to get yourself together. But if you end up owing taxes, they're not going to start calculating the fees from October. They're actually going to start calculating those fees from April. Okay, so what that's going to look like is if you end up owing taxes, and I say like for myself, because I use TurboTax, you're gonna have to pay those whatever taxes that you have up front, or you can reach out to the IRS for a payment plan. But just know a couple months down the road, they're gonna send you another letter just letting you know how much your fees and stuff are. But they are good about, showing you like the itemized, list of like how long the penalties are for, the dates, and stuff like that. You just have to look on the back of the letter. But that's basically what the extension um translates to. So if you're expecting to get a refund, that's fine. You know, just know it's going to be delayed. However, if you end up owing, then there will be penalties and interest, but it's going to be clocked from April the 16th until the day that you actually file your return. So,
Got you. Thank you. So it's not like I filed an extension and I can forget about it. And then they're like, you need to follow up and you're going to have to pay a little bit more if you do owe.
correct.
Okay. And that's
Correct.
me calling myself out
But,
again. So I was like, oh, I followed an extension. I don't have to worry about it.
but
About it. Oh,
it's just a a nice safeguard. It's just a nice safeguard. Hmm.
so now that as of the day that this episode airs on April 15th, now that tax season is essentially over, how should we prepare for our success for the 2026 tax season?
Oh, that's a great question as well. If you have a pattern of owing taxes, especially if you're a business owner, let me start from that angle. You definitely want to consider paying quarterly taxes. If you have a tax preparer, in most cases, if you already owe, they'll give you kind of like what they call like a little voucher to kind of give you a heads up, like, hey, if you're, just say you owed like $4,000, for 2024. and you just have a habit of owing, they're gonna say, hey, to kind of, for lack of better term, sticker shock, right? To kind of soften the blow, it's easier just to go ahead and pay a little bit into, the IRS system as you go, as opposed to waiting till the end of the year and then you don't know what your cash flow is looking like and having to pay all that, in one lump sum. So especially if you are a business and that's, pretty much your cadence, if you will, there's a website called EFTPS, electronic filing. No, I think I just say EFTPS. I don't remember the whole acronym, but that's what it's EF, Edward, Frank, Tom, Patty, and Sylvester, right? EFTPS.gov. That's where you want to go to file your quarterly taxes. And this is how you do that. So you have to track, how you're performing in your business. So hopefully you're tracking like the income that you're receiving, the expenses that you're spending out. If you got a profit and loss statement, you're only paying taxes on your profit. So anything that's remaining after expenses, we never pay taxes on the gross revenue, only on the profit. Why? Because that's what you're going to have to pay at the bottom of your Schedule C form when you file your taxes. We only get taxed on the profit. Okay, so if you got profit, self employment taxes are 15.3%. You'll just take the profit calculated by 15.3, take that money, you'll pay it to EFTPS or you'll hold it in a reserve, right? Um, if you are, doing your personal taxes, you'll kind of do the same, similar thing. Um, I would, I'm not quite sure about EFTPS for personal. That I'm not quite sure if that's a Latasha question. That's my accounting manager question. But if nothing else, you can definitely create you a savings account and hold that money there. You know what I'm saying? If you know that you're going to be, owing taxes, just take about 20, 30%, of your 9 to 5 and just put it on over there. And just let it stay there, let it be good, right? Until, you get the proper information to, pay into, into your system. But if you go to irs.gov, I know you can make payments there. They have a link for that where you can pay it.
Okay. Thank you. If you're
Mm-hmm.
like me at all, because if I see the money, then I'm like, oh yeah, I can spend that. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
put it in the savings and then like hide it from yourself. Or sometimes like I have two different accounts. One of them is for specific bills. So I kind of just hide that debit card so I won't see it.
Mm-hmm.
If I see it, I'm
Exactly.
like, yeah, I can spend it. That's terrible. But we're getting better. We're learning.
Right. And auto pay is your best friend. So anytime that you have a system or a feature where you can auto transfer those funds, that's even better.
Got you.
Mm-hmm.
So most of our listening session participants expressed the desire to reach a certain point where they didn't have to worry, essentially. Like they didn't have to worry about owing taxes or didn't have to worry about living paycheck to paycheck, etc. So what small steps could our listeners take to build their savings and work towards wealth?
Yes, that phrase delayed gratification,
Hmm.
and y'all hear me. And this you I'm 45 years old. Life be life and yet sis, life be life
It does.
right? I promise it does. But at the end of the day, you're just gonna have to make some decisions, about how you want your life to go. Like, and I use myself as an example with me leaving my full-time job and going into GIP Academy, right? Not only did I have to consider how it was going to affect me, but my husband, my kids, because we got one baby in the house, but we still got four other sons that we take care of, outside of the house. Like the month after I left my job, we had a tree fall on our house, from a storm. And I caught myself saving, you know, and doing the right thing, but because of the fact that the insurance didn't cover the tree that's in the backyard, because it was a humongous tree, it cost us about $12,000 to get that tree cut down. So
Yeah.
that was pretty much the bulk of our savings. So what do you do after that? You know what I'm saying? So you have to keep those things, in perspective. So having to review your numbers, people don't like the B word, but budget. You don't have to call it the budget. You can call it your money plan. You call it your, vacation plan, your whatever you want to call it. But it's those little small things that are going to, help you get from where you are. And, not having to, if you, when it comes to budgeting, to get where you need to go, you either have to increase your income or decrease your expenses. There's no way around it. You got to do one or the other. Increase the income, decrease the expenses. If you got to take, extra little part-time job that's not going to take a lot of your brain power, but it's still gonna bring in income, do that. If you got some expenses that you can kind of do without for a certain period of time, do that. I had to, I was enjoying getting my facials and get my hair done. I can do my own hair. I can do that silk press all day long. Just go get my little shampoo and conditioner, get my little serum, right? And you just got to get it. You just got to do it. So things that you have to do. Hello, DoorDash, Uber Eats. When I was working, me and my husband working full time, just because, especially being a school administrator, it's like you being on call,
Mhm.
right? So a lot of times I just did not, my schedule would not allow me to cook. Even to the point, child, I'd be like, I'm gonna do a little crock pot, Nita. I'm gonna put something in a little crock pot. Till I get back home, the crock pot will be burnt up. Crock pot will be burnt up. Like, how you do that? What we doing? Right? And so you just have to really make sure that you are adjusting to and be realistic about your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right? Of course, we had to definitely come down off of, the DoorDash and stuff like that. But now that I'm home, I got time to now, on Sundays I can kind of plan out what I'm going to cook, and things like that. So you just have to be really diligent and don't be afraid to ask for help. Right? Because one of the resources that we have here in Memphis and Shelby County, I was like, it's the best kept secret in Shelby County. It's the Greater Memphis Financial Empowerment Center. It is paid for by Shelby County. It's paid for by your tax dollars, right? And you can call them and get free help with credit, guidance, credit advisory, budgeting, things like that. So I'm pretty sure there are some other resources probably within your neighborhood or your local municipality of the same type of service, right? Don't be afraid to go out and find those resources, to help you get to where you need to be because nobody, is a success on their own, right?
Right.
It definitely takes a village. So those are some of the things I would definitely recommend. So never, everybody's story is different, everybody's situation is different, but do whatever you got to do to fulfill, the life that you desire. So,
That asking for help part really resonates because it's a matter of swallowing your pride and like you can't do it on your own. There are
yeah.
people and resources and tools there. Like you just got to look for them. I had never heard about the Shelby County credit resource, so I'm going to look and see what's available in my county, back home in Buncombe County. Like see what tools are already there that we can lean into.
Right. Cause then I mean, and I'll just call myself out again. Cause like it's just an issue of pride.
Hmm.
Cause by the time I went through all of that with the tree, and it took us about 6 months to get our house, together with the insurance and all of that. Because I'm the one that maintains most of, the financial management in our house. And I was just like, who do I look like going to the GMFEC and I'm supposed to be the financial expert? Like you need a team just like everybody else needs a team,
Right.
right? So why not go and get some help? Why not get another perspective from somebody from the outside looking in, right? There's
Mm.
nothing wrong with that.
Thank you. And I'm gonna have to smack my own hand a little bit and be like, you can do your own toes at home. You can get the pumice stone. You can do your nails. You don't go spend that much money on your nails. Um, so what practical budgeting financial what practical budgeting or financial wellness tools are available through GIP or elsewhere?
Okay, so one of the courses that we have It's called Budget Me Please. Now, as I'm saying this now, most of these courses are in GIP Academy, but we are in the process of moving some of those courses not off of GIP Academy, but making them available for sale individually. Because
Mm.
right there, they're not on the website individually, but we do have a plethora of courses. But Budget Me Please, I think will speak to the entrepreneurs and the layman's, right? Because we're talking about, financial management. And with that, I'm basically sharing how I did my personal budget for my house. Um, and I also include like when you're doing your budget, like I said, you have to think about it like it's a living, breathing document. However you set your budget, don't feel bad. Don't be ashamed that you have to change it because, like I said, life be life, right? The budget is designed for you to adjust whenever you need to. That's the first thing, right? So anytime that we're talking about money, we always have to deal with mindset first, right? So we have to go ahead and just, get the guilt and shame, put it over there, put it in the trash. We can't do that because we got to keep going, right? Because we got a goal to accomplish. The next thing is you got to be able to identify all of your income that's coming in. Focus on your net income. Why? Because that's the money that you're working with, right? The take home. Then you also in all your income, yours, your significant other, any other secondary income, things like that, right? Then you have to look at your expenses. The way I would set it up, I like to do it around what I call payday budgeting, right? Because it's just easier to track depending on when you get paid. And so I would use a spreadsheet for kind of like what we call the macro vision of your budget, right? So you'll have like for your monthly expenses, the whole month, you'll have the list of every bill that you have to pay, the date that it is due, because that's going to be important. And then you'll put the amount, right? And then whatever notes that you need to put, because sometimes you have price adjustments. Maybe you have a subscription that's going to increase, later on throughout the year, stuff like that, right? That's the first part. And then I will use that spreadsheet. I will take that spreadsheet as my guide. I would get like simple notebook, pen and paper. Yes, I said pen and paper, right? And so because at the time, my husband and I got paid bi-weekly. So I would take his net income, my net income from whatever payday that is. Say if we got paid on the 15th, right? I would go back to the spreadsheet, what bills I do between the 15th and just say the next 2 weeks, right? I will list those bills, take that income, subtract it from those expenses, and whatever was remaining, I would either put that in savings or use that to pay down credit card debt. you know, just you have, little systems like that. And then if you have any type of like credit card debt or stuff like that, then on that spreadsheet, there'll be a separate tab for you to, to calculate those things. So when you purchase Budget Me Please, you'll also get the spreadsheets that I created, and stuff like that. So those are just, some of the things that I have. But especially from, and like I said, you can use that for your personal as well as your business. But we also have, on our YouTube channel, we talk about budgeting there. All that stuff on, YouTube is free. So we talk about budgeting, we talk about cash flow for businesses, all that type of stuff. So we've got paid items, but we also have, free things as well. But of course, I'm also always going to talk about GIP Academy for our businesses because you're also going to need a level of support as you're trying to walk through this. What is, being a business owner and checking my numbers and all this? What does this mean? I don't want to be overwhelmed. So if you need that level of hand holding, we got GIP Academy as well.
Thank you. As you were talking, I'm thinking about how I do my budget 'cause I currently get paid bi-weekly, and it's usually like I I have it in this colorful document because a part of me is like 2 years old and I'm okay with that. But
You
it's like
love color. There's no wrong with that.
but I think my downfall currently is only thinking in terms of like the next month. So for one, like I'm gonna anyone who's listening, like lean into these tools that are readily available. And two, I would like to invest in the spreadsheet because I want to, I'm manifesting this. I'm saying it out loud. I'm
Come
walking,
on.
but I'm gonna be out of debt by the time I'm 30. So I got 2 years, and I'm gonna pay off my student loans. Um,
Yeah.
but it's that delayed gratification part, though. I think not impulse buying, not impulse spending, and really thinking and putting attention into budgeting. The B word. It makes me itchy. I'm gonna rephrase it later. But
Mm-hmm.
thank you, Sonja. Okay. This is a bit of a topic switch, but kind of because I
Yeah.
mentioned an old schoolmate hit me up, and I'm like 99% sure it was leading up to like a pyramid scheme or something, like some kind of scam. It felt
Mm-hmm.
sketchy, but they started asking me nosy questions about my job and whether I'm happy with my income and if I was interested in diversifying my money. And I'm a kind person, so that's often mistaken as gullible, but I'm not Boo Boo the Fool.
Mm-hmm.
So I did not fall for that scam. But what advice would you give to folks to avoid money scams? And also, what does it mean to actually diversify your income and investments?
All right. So let's talk about these scams first. Uh, so one, nothing that a good old Google search can't, because I promise you, whatever is out there between Google and YouTube University, somebody is giving some type of like video on like their perspective about whatever said program it is, right? And if you have a trusted financial expert, definitely reach out to them. One of the things that we do on our content, we talk about kind of like fake news. So, and we came up with that because as my accounting manager and our Latasha is, we're scrolling TikTok and Instagram particularly, we'll come across videos where people are actually misinforming people. They're either directly misinforming them on purpose or they're kind of using hooks and stuff to kind of reel them in and not tell them everything just so they can invest in their program, right? So one of the I'll give example of two of the videos that we actually did fake news on. One was there was a video where an individual was teaching business owners how to, I guess, give the illusion that their business was making money by putting all of their W-2 income or their 9 to 5 income into their bank account, and that will be seen as income, and that's actually not the case. Because any personal funds, especially if you're the business owner, any personal funds that you put into the business is not considered earned income. That's considered owner's contribution. And it's not gonna be reported on your profit and loss. Profit and loss shows your earned income. Anything that you put into the business or take out of the business as a business owner, that's gonna be under the equity section of the balance sheet. Right. So we kind of had to, clarify some things about that. Now, I also said too, especially when it comes to like the type of like credit and lending options that you have as business owners, sometimes depending on like the higher risk type of lending that's out there, especially if you're in the real estate space, you might hear it as like hard money lending, but they have similar other programs like that. Um, Sometimes they may only ask you for like your bank statements, and if your bank statements are showing like you had $10,000 a month in deposits and so many, withdrawals, it gives the illusion that you're making money in your business. They're not going to necessarily ask you if where that money is coming from, whether you earned it or you just deposited from your personal account, right? But just be leery about that because those higher risk type of lending programs, you're going to have your payment dates and the way you repay is going to be kind of weird, kind of similar to like a payday loan, to where you have to pay back like every week, every 2 weeks. Some of them I've seen where they ask for payments every day. You know, you just have to be very leery about those types of things, and then of course it comes with a higher interest because it's higher risk, right? The second one that I had, since you were talking about concerts, at I think it was the end of last year, there's a certain entertainer that has like a Western album out, you know, And there was a tax person that was saying, "Hey, this is how you can write this certain entertainer's concert tickets off." And we have like, hold the phone there, sir. Can't do that because there was a point where you could, as a business owner, like if you wanted to entertain your clients and take them to a nice concert or to a NBA game or something like that, and you could deduct that. The IRS no longer allows you to take that deduction, right? However, if you want to, like, need if I wanted you to come to a Grizzlies game, right, I'll have to pay for that out of pocket, right? However, if I wanted to, treat you to the game and I buy you a hot dog, a barbecue sandwich, because Memphis we know for our barbecue, all that type of stuff, right? I could deduct the meal because the meal was separate from the purchase of those tickets, and that's you can do that as a meal expense at 50%, right? So like I said, it was just there to reel you in, but it didn't give you all the information. So, but luckily by the time I saw that video, a lot of the tax professionals already called dude out. They were like, "Oh, don't listen to dude," right? Because he tell you everything. But it was publication. If anybody else wants more information about that, it's publication 463. Just go to irs.gov and you can find publication 463 and you can get that information. So you got to have somebody that you trust. So for anybody that's listening, you can follow GIP Financials. And if you see anything, including you need, if you see something on social media and
Mhm.
you like, Sonya, is this true? Please send it to us and we're gonna find out. We're gonna do our research. Right. We strongly and highly encourage that because that's what we want to do. We want to try to make sure that you guys have a safe space to find out the information so you can do what you need to do and thrive, right?
Right.
Because a lot of people are, they see what we do, and we have to charge, for our services. We are not the cheapest. I'll be the first to tell you we're not the cheapest. So a lot of people can't afford us for done for you services. That's why we get GFP Academy. However, um, instead of that, they're just like, well, I could just do it by myself. Or they find somebody online that they trust, and then it might they might not be getting the information that they need, or they might be excluding some things out just to kind of get you to invest in their program. But that's just pretty much kind of how that is. So that's that question. So what was the second question you asked me?
What does it actually mean to diversify your income and investments?
Right, for me as a 45-year-old African American female wife and mom, to diversify your income basically means what other sources of revenue are there that are safe, for your particular investment personality, right? So you got your work income, you got your business income. As you build up your retirement, you have your 401k, you got your Roth IRAs, whatever that you feel like, whatever, like if you got a 9 to 5 and they offer a certain type of benefit, right? Such as retirement. Look into those options to see what's going to be the best for you at your age, because they talk a lot about like risk tolerance and stuff like that. If you're younger, you can probably take like like Vanguard for example. I'm not endorsing Vanguard. I'm just using them as an example. I have to put that out there on the internet, right? So like when I was a teacher working at a private school, they had a target, like I think it was a 2045. It was based off of the date that you're supposed to retire, right? And because of the fact that at that time I was young, so that particular type of mutual fund was a more aggressive type of fund, right? Because you got time to put money in and let it work for you. Now that I'm 45, I can't be as aggressive, right? So I have to look at things that are, a little bit more moderate. Like I'm gonna be honest, I've never been the aggressive investing type of chick. Like stocks and stuff kind of scare me. So I would have to make sure I'd rather do an investment, a mutual fund or like an ETF or something like that, to where I have smart people that can do that for you and it's in a protected, product, right? So that's what it means diversify. Like, what other types of ways can your money work for you? But you also have to, like I said, consider like your investment personality, right? Don't invest, like you said, in scams and stuff like that. That as soon as you put it in there and then it goes berserk, then you about to freak out. Don't do that, right? I would rather you just, invest like in the S&P 500 or something like that. I don't know if y'all heard of Wall Street Trapper. I follow Wall Street Trapper, right? I think he's a pretty good dude. His advice is from what I've heard has been pretty solid, and he also has uh, like communities and stuff like that where whatever he's investing in, you can kind of follow his play, stuff like that. You just have to kind of follow. And then, his story and how he, came into investing, that was intriguing to me because he had, a past, as a drug dealer, but he just used those skills to invest. You know what I'm saying? You can kind of, you got to see people by their fruit as well, Nita. You just got to do that, right? Because if somebody's coming to you with an opportunity, but you don't really see any transformation on their side, you kind of got to give a little side eye,
Yeah.
right? But also look at people that have actually walked the talk, and not just in the success, but also are they transparent enough to tell you when they bump their heads and learn some, major lessons about things,
Hmm.
right? Because it's all about that know, like, and trust, right? And if you're a spiritual person, there's nothing wrong with praying and asking for discernment.
I was about to say that. Use your discernment.
You
Yeah.
know, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I hope I answered your question.
You did. Thank you. Thank you. So
Hmm.
speaking of community, I'm gonna look Wall Street Trapper up. So I think the best thing you can do is funnel back into your community. Um, so we are gearing up for a series around alternative economies, and I was wondering if you could explain the notion of alternative economies to our listeners.
Okay. And so now I will be honest as far as like, can you give me a little bit more context about alternative economies just to make sure that I'm in alignment?
Yes. So when I think of alternative economies, I think of I guess alternatives to like traditional capitalism. So I think of like community gardens, especially if your community's in a food desert. How do we barter with each other? If I give you my eggs and you give me your cilantro, like is that a fair trade kind of thing? But more so like how do we keep funds in our community and uplift each other in our communities? Um,
Gotcha.
I gave examples, I guess, then
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely talk about that from two sides, from a community standpoint, and then also just some of the things that we've done within GIP with some, excuse me, with some of our clients. So I'm a part of a community called Soul Shift Inner Circle, led by the amazing Sean Strickland. And I'll make sure to give you that information as well,
thank you.
Nita. And what I call her Pastor Sean because she's also my pastor of the church's Fellowship of Champions Church in Fayetteville, Arkansas, with her and her husband, the amazing Dr. Edwin Strickland. Um, she started Soul Shift. Um, I think that was what 2020. She had other programs prior to Soul Shift, but I met her in 2018 through Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur through another community. And from there, she talked about how wealth, how your soul affects kind of how you view wealth and how you receive wealth, right? How you interpret it, especially from a kingdom standpoint. And from there, it kind of just transformed into like, your money perspectives before you can even think about, manifesting and receiving wealth. What are some of the soul issues that you have that are blocking you from, you know, lack and abundance? Maybe some traumatic things that may have happened to you to where you feel like you may not deserve to be wealthy, or you feel like it may not be safe for you to be wealthy, things like that. And I've been in this group going on 5 years now. Going on 5 years. And we have grown from, working on our souls. And granted, it's very much like the budget. It's a never ending process, Jack. Right? To the point now where we're actually, talking about wealth building within our community, right? Within Soul Shift Inner Circle. So we've grown from, you know, um, changing jobs, starting businesses, to, a lot of times when we're interacting and needing things, we start within our community first. like when it comes to like taxes, and financial things and stuff like that. A lot of community members come to me, stuff like that. And then now, what we're talking about since Pastor Sean, especially given the economic, situation that we're in right now as a country, you know, she's kind of like, if you can't beat them, kind of join them. So how can we kind of take advantage, of this current presidential economy right now? How can we make this thing work for us, as people of color? So now we're looking at investing in crypto, and things like that, in wealth building and legacy, things. We're looking at real estate, just tapping into the resources that we have within our community. And matter of fact, Pastor Sean right now has a 90-day wealth challenge going on. So I'll make sure to send you that information as well. You can follow her on all social media platforms, but she's very much into wealth empowerment, particularly for Black women. But just, having someone that she's very much has the personality of like every joint supplies. So anybody that's in the community that, has a strength, we're tapping into their strength, right? To be able to, grow together and do what we need to do. Because at the end of the day, what we're doing, our outcome is not just for our individual families. We're looking to, pool our money together so we can, invest in communities to help other women that might be in domestic situations and trafficking, situations and things like that, so they can have a safe place to stay, and then we can, build up and edify, the kingdom in that way. If anybody needs, a cash infusion, right? We have within the community of almost, I think we got about 80 or 90 of us in there now, where within 24 hours we have raised well over, between $5,000 and $10,000 to help, help somebody. That's the power of community, to be able to get somebody and change their life, to get them out of a particular situation, right? And to be able to, be a part of that. And then to say, like, how can I take GIP financials and do kind of like the same thing? So what we're actually doing in GIP, we're taking that same type of community type of mindset, partnering with some of our clients, and we're doing like a bookkeeping apprenticeship program. So we can, if with Memphis, we're unfortunately we are known for, poverty and crime, right? But how can we do that? We can expose, our community to new experiences. Like nobody's really talking about bookkeeping because it ain't really sexy. It ain't a sexy career. I'm gonna be honest, it ain't really sexy, but it can get your bills paid, right? And there are so many, we have over 600,000 businesses in the state. We have well over half of that in the city of Memphis alone, right? So what if we are able to at least start, teaching people how to manage their money so they can help manage businesses and things like that. So it's those little seeds that you can plant in
Mhm.
community to help, all it takes is one. And once you get that one, it can just, it's the spark that keeps the fire going. So that's how we're looking at, alternative economies from the community standpoint. Well, let's talk about this bartering, because I'm good for a good barter, honey. I'm good for it, right? Because when we started GIP financials, that's pretty much what we did. The services that we needed, like social media, all the building websites and stuff, that's what we did. Like, hey, I know, cash flow. Look, build me a website. I got you on your books for a certain amount of time. But hear me, if you're gonna do something like that, make sure you get it in writing, and make sure that the value that you're giving is the same, it's reciprocal on the other side, right?
Mhm.
So you don't want to be in a situation where you're giving somebody like $3,000 worth of services in a year's time, and the equivalent of theirs is only like half of that,
Right.
right? So you want to be crystal clear, when you're doing bartering services, and that everybody has an understanding of what they're bringing to the table.
Thank you. Um, Thinking about how like having rent parties was more popular
Mm-hmm.
back in the day than it is now, but that's like a classic example of alternative economies. Like you're not having to go to a loan shark or go to the bank and get, a last minute loan or something like that. Like you can lean on your community. the church that I grew up in, we would go around and raise money for someone who had a need, a
Mm-hmm.
bill or lights that were going to get cut off. Like that's there are ways to look within our own communities, you know. And I think now there's so many false narratives out there that are like, you have to go do this, you have to get this new. I saw a commercial for it, like a debit card service where it's like you can get access to your paycheck a week early or 2 weeks early. That sounds wrong. That
Mm-hmm.
sounds like it's setting you up for failure. And you don't have to do that. You can swallow that pride, lean on your community, ask for help, use the resources that are there. Um, Earlier when I was like Googling and using the internets, so I didn't realize that credit unions were an example of alternative economies. And that's something my sister and I have talked about because she's like, I want to get into this credit union. And I think in her conversation, she
Mm-hmm.
mentioned the need to like know someone who's already in the credit union, like relying on that
Mm-hmm.
relationship. And I don't know anything about them. But since they're
Yeah.
own members, then it's like considered alternative economies. The same thing that goes with like the co-op grocery store or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
ways to involve community wealth and like local currency systems. Um, so
Absolutely.
could you speak to the financial or economic aspects of alternative economies like the credit unions? I have no idea how those work. Um, but I feel like it's always seemed like a good thing, just like a wall of
Mm-hmm.
access up for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I can tell you just based off of my experiences with credit unions. So yeah, that's it. That's exactly right. When you participate in a credit union, you kind of acting like a shareholder in a sense, right? Because most of the credit unions, you're going to have some type of like savings account where you have to pay in like a member fee or something like that upon accessing your account, right? But then like membership has its privileges because a lot of times with credit unions, because they're smaller, you're probably going to get more flexibility in like your loan offerings, your interest rates, and things like that. From my experiences, they've been way more credible. Because I've gotten like car loans, I've gotten better car loans, and even like mortgages and stuff like HELOCs through credit unions. Right, my HELOC is with the credit union. My car before I had it refinanced was with a credit union, right? And then also as a business owner, the credit unions are going to be more likely to partner like with your local governments because like in the city of Memphis, Shelby County has their own credit union. The city of Memphis has its own credit union, right? But I'm in a technical assistance program where Shelby County has partnered with Hope Credit Union because I believe Hope has bank branches in Tennessee, Kentucky, I want to say Alabama, right? But they've partnered with Shelby County to where the members in the technical assistance program have a chance to apply for funding, especially if they are awarded like a contract, because the purpose of the TA program is to teach, entrepreneurs how to do business with the Shelby County government and to get them to, apply for more bids. So if they already have a contract in place, of course, if you got a contract, you got to have some working capital in order to sustain it. Because local governments are going to have it at minimum, probably like a net 60, net 90. You ain't going to get your money up front, right? So you got to have working capital to sustain your operations. You can take that contract with Whole Credit Union to say, like, hey, here's my collateral. I've got the award. I just need the capital to sustain it, and they'll give you grant you the loan with low interest, right? So that's a definite way that you can, leverage, your networks, especially with credit unions. And then what you were talking about having to, know somebody, that sounds more like Navy Federal to me because I know that's how I ended up. You have to know somebody with a Navy Federal account in order to, apply for or be involved with Navy Federal. You have to literally have a referral, right? And that's again, like with Navy Federal, I know at one point in time, especially during the pandemic, Navy Federal was the bee's knees. They were like, "Girl, you go in there and get you a car loan, and you didn't even have to hardly, do any paperwork. They just like you and the family, we got you." you know, I think things have changed since then. Think things have changed since then. But I know at one point in time, like that's what they were saying. If you got a Navy Federal account, you can go get, a credit loan. And it was just the level of access to it. That was, the benefit of it. But yeah, those different types of, alternative economies are great because, and you were talking about rent parties, I'm thinking about the candy lady, right? Don't play
Yes.
with candy lady, freeze cups, all of that, pickles.
Everybody had a Miss Hester on the corner. Like
Man, what? Nachos? Come on. You in the bag? Or you get that report card money, you got a little change in your pocket. You gonna get you a, a freeze cup, you be set, you know. And so, yeah, just thinking about just how creative we are as a people. You know what I'm saying? Because that's how we grew up. That's how we sustain, like you said, between the church and just the folks in the neighborhood that just come together because they understand how it is to go through life, and they don't want to see anybody struggling if they don't have to. Like there are no matter where your environment is, whether it's at your baby's school, your high school alumni, whether you Greek or not, like you said, you got poetry community, things like that. There are different ways where you can, generate alternative economies for sustainability. Absolutely.
yes. The I remember talking to someone and they just dropped random gems of knowledge like it was nothing, but they said something along the lines of solitude or believing that you are alone essentially is a tool of white supremacy. Like our
Mm.
ancestors were in community. Like it's always been about a village and about
Hmm.
leaning on the people in your community. So thank you so much. We are wrapping up. Would you please leave our audience with another little wiggle? Wow,
That's it.
you to come back. But would you please leave our audience with a little nugget of wisdom? Any advice or affirmations that you'd like to share is welcome.
Absolutely. I just think, just going back to given what's going on right now in our economy, y'all, we're gonna be okay. Just like Nita said, just, tapping into who we are. We are our ancestors' wildest dreams. That means we still got our ancestors in our DNA, honey. We're gonna make it happen. And just because, things are going on that we may not understand, we definitely gotta tap in, spiritually and community wise that we're here to help each other. Tap into whatever your God-given assignment is, whatever your gift is. You feel like you've been lifing so much you don't even know, child, between kids and husbands and working out it, you ain't tapped into your gift. It's still inside of you. God gives us gifts without repentance.
Hmm.
Whatever that gift is God has inside of you, you God is giving it to you to make money and to build wealth. So tap into that thing, right? Get still and get creative and tap into your community. Like Nita said, we can't do it alone. We haven't been doing it alone, so we cannot be doing it now, right? And just know that at the end of the day, one of the things that I'm having to still learn too, Nita, from a personal standpoint, because even like I had that goal of being debt free, but then I got remarried. We had a blended family, and life was life, and right, and so that goal kind of got away from me. Part of me, I'm still kind of beating myself up about that, but then you still have to look at your accomplishments and where you've come from, right? I went from working 4 jobs to working one job, right? And now I have the time to come in and pour into, y'all in podcasts and stuff like that. That's a blessing in itself. And just knowing that wherever you are in your life, you can pause and course correct because we have a God that that loves us and loves our socks off, and He's just waiting on us to be like, "Girl, you ready? Come on, so I can show you what to do." You know what I'm saying? Just tap in. This is time for you to tap in with your community, within yourself, spiritually, and let's just live our lives, and just know that at the end of the day, we are going to be all right. That's the affirmation.
Yes.
We are going to be all right.
Yes. Feel like the maybe it's just me, my mind being on Kendrick, but now the song's playing in my head. We gonna
Be all right. All
be
right.
alright.
Yes.
So, are there any upcoming GIP financials events for our audience to attend?
Yes. So first of all, we have our podcast from Chaos to Clarity, Unleash Your Business Potential every Thursday. We have a new episode, and we're, like I said, we're changing the cadence a little bit to where we have an episode and it's followed by a live Q&A. So just check on our website, gipfinancials.com. You can actually check the podcast link, or you can check our events link for the podcast schedule. And then another thing that we also have coming up um, is GIP Academy. What we've done with GIP Academy now is that we're opening up at least one aspect of the community to the public if they want to come in for a drop-in fee. So like Nita had the opportunity to come in and experience one of our monthly live teachings, but we're opening that up now as a drop-in fee. So you may, just if you want to come and take a look at what GIP has to offer, but you're not ready to commit, you can drop in for $47, for the monthly live Q&A. And if you're ready to, commit to the $97 a month, you get that monthly live teaching, the quarterly one-to-ones, and the online resource library all for that one low price.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, always check our events page and our podcast, because that's where the majority of our stuff is going to be at.
Thank you so much. And we will insert that information into our show notes. Please continue to keep up with Sonja Jones by visiting GIP Financial's website and following GIP Financials on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. Our team will definitely make sure that's available. And those of you who are listening, go ahead and share this good news with your community. If this is your first episode and somehow you made it this far, please rewind it, go back, go listen to the rest of the series, and then come back here. If you'd like to hear more or engage more, if you'd like this series to continue, if you'd like to interact and just learn more things about taxes and finances, please let us know. Hit us up on our social media pages or email helloblack@blackappalachiancoalition.org or check out our website. Until next time, peace and blessings, y'all.
Take care.
Thank